Are Toronto condos actually selling right now? Because if you look at the headlines, you'd think the answer is no, or barely. But when you dig into the numbers, how many new listings are hitting the market, how fast they're selling, and how long they're sitting, the story's a lot more nuanced. So today I'm gonna break down what's really happening in Toronto's condo market as of fall 2025, what sellers can expect if they list, and how much leverage buyers actually have right now. So how any market is faring almost always comes down to supply and demand. So I'm going to start with supply, and I've got some graphs here. These numbers are for the condo market for Toronto, but I didn't hone in like just downtown. I did the whole city, but it's not TREB, which is the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, which is massive. It's not the GTA either. So it's City of Toronto. When you look at this graph, you can see that we've got three lines here. There's the blue, the orange, and the green. Blue is 2023, orange is 2024, green 2025 year to date so far. Obviously it's gonna stop as of September. This graph is for new listings. So this is like how much like new inventory, and I'm gonna say new because it might be the same place just being relisted again, but it's how many new places are being listed. And so the lower on this, the lower the number on this graph, the less places that are being listed, and the higher it is, the more places that are being listed. So if you look at the start of the year, so up in this portion here, kind of January to almost April, you can see that by far, 2025 was higher than 2024, was higher than 2023. But things start to change right around like March to April. So you can see right here, we see a shift where the number of new listings for 2025 actually dips below that of 2024. So I think this is probably due to either seller fatigue or seller fear that they may not be able to sell or get anything close to what they think they might want to get. But the point is that the number of new listings has declined on kind of a year-over-year basis, following the same kind of seasonal trends, but certainly down from 2024. And the number of new listings tells a bit of the story for sure, but we also want to take a look at active listings as well. So I'm going to tap over to this slide as well and show you that active listings would be the amount of inventory that's currently on the market. So it's not necessarily the number of places that are listed in a period of time, but how much in total is kind of on the market for that given month. And so you can see that, again, by far and away, 2025 has had a higher total number of active listings than either 2024 or 2023. So despite the fact that the number of new listings has actually slowed down and dipped below the rate at which new listings were coming up for 2024, the total number of active listings is still much, much higher. And that's because, and we'll get to this in a second, but that's because places are taking longer to sell. So the supply right now is extremely high for the city. It's extremely high for all the places where in the city that are condo dense. We are seeing more inventory than we've seen in an incredibly long time, almost ever. And that's certainly part of the reason, a big part of the reason, why we are in such a sluggish condo market. So when we switch over to sales and we take a look at what's going on there, you can see that in the first part of the year, I mean, January right here actually wasn't bad. We had more sales in January of 2025 than we did in 2023, for example. But again, much less than what we had in 2024. But then as soon as we got to February all the way through to May, which is supposed to be a typically busy-ish time of year, 2023 and 2025 pull way ahead. You know, these lines are higher. Again, we're talking about sales. That means that the higher the line on the graph, the more sales that there are. So it's a little bit opposite from, you know, what we were talking about before in terms of like what is good and what is bad. So on this graph in particular, higher would be more sales and good for sellers anyway. But if you're a buyer, this could be a really good thing for you as well. So there's an interesting turn which is happening right around here. So right in about June up until now in September, where the number of sales have actually come up and have, I guess, caught up, if you will, to 2024, not quite 2023. We're still a little bit behind in terms of like comparing the same months of previous years to 2023. But in 2024, they've kind of caught up. Now you can flip the script a little bit and say, well, in 2024, we actually saw a decline. So you look at the peak here in April, and then it's just kind of a decline going down to June, and then, your typical kind of like seasonal decline through the summer, and that's fine. But you could also argue that the trend for 2025 so far has kind of been on an upward trajectory heading into the summer. And we actually saw more sales in June and July than we did in what would typically be the busier months of like April and May, just as an example. There has been some catch up with respect to sales on a kind of a seasonal basis, and the summer was actually fairly robust for 2025. Now, August, we saw like our typical kind of slowdown, and the August for 2025 was particularly slow, and it really kind of dropped down, especially below 2023, but just a touch below 2024. We saw a nice bump in September, and you can see right here, it's a little bit clustered together. The sales for September are much higher than 2024 and 2023. 1 month doesn't set a trend, but is that the potential turnaround month, September 2025, where we start to see a greater number of sales moving forward from here? So to me, this chart is a little bit of a silver lining, I guess, if you will, if you're a seller. And then if you're a buyer looking at it, you're going, okay, things might be turning around a little bit where the market isn't quite as favorable as it has been for me, a buyer, throughout the beginning of this year, right up until the summer. But when we get to the next chart after, I'll show you that things still are quite favorable for buyers. But this chart is showing that there might be a little bit of a turnaround happening, which is interesting to see. So this next chart is the sales to new listing ratio. An easy thing to call it is the absorption rate. So the idea is that how many new listings are being put on the market compared to how many sales are happening. So like if 100 new condos got listed and 50 of them sold, you'd have an absorption rate of 50%, just as an example. So the sales to new listing ratio gives us a really good idea of like the ratio between supply and demand. And when you're looking at the numbers, anything from 40 to 60% is typically what we would identify as a balanced market. Anything above 60% is a seller's market, and anything below 40% is a buyer's market. From the previous slide with the sales, maybe we've seen a little bit of a turnaround, but then when you look at the sales to new listing ratio, it's still quite low. So take a look at this. The green line again represents 2025. At the beginning of the year, when sales were really low, but inventory was really high, you're seeing numbers like 26%, 28%, 26, 25, 24, peaking at 33% in August. But then you'll see that there was a dip down back to 28% in September. But that 28% is actually higher than what we've seen in previous Septembers in 2023 and 2024. But in the overall picture, sales to new listing ratio, or an absorption rate of 28%, very firmly in buyer's market territory. So the market still very heavily leans or favors buyers in this market. This next chart is the listing days on market, and it's a median number. And the reason that I use median, because I'm going to use median for price as well, is that median, in my mind, just mathematically, it's a much better representation of the actual market. Okay, averages can experience something called drag, where a number can either be dragged up a lot, can be dragged up a lot or pulled down a lot by outliers. And certainly in the condo market, you can have a lot of outliers, places that are selling for really, really low, properties that have been on the market for an exceptionally long period of time. And so the median is that middle. And so that's a much better, more accurate representation of what's actually happening in the market. So the listing days on market, you can see that it is higher for 2025 compared to 2024 and 2023 by still quite a bit. So, the difference being 5 days between 2025 and 2024. And, you're looking at, again, a median of about a month, 29 days. Now, this is the listing days on market. There's a difference between listing days on market and property days on market. Property days on market is how many days in total a property has been on the market as it's gone through different iterations of being on the market. It was on at 700,000, and then they took it off the market, put it back on at 650, and then they took it off and put it back on at 625. All those days combined would be the property days on market. This is just the listing days on market. So what this kind of shows you is when a property is priced accurately, it should sell within roughly 29 days of being on the market, which again is still higher and again leads towards is demonstrating that it's still very much a buyer's market. And then lastly, price. And again, I talked about before, this is median price, not necessarily average price, but you can see for 2025, the median price is well below any of the previous years. So even though maybe we've started to hit a bit of a turning point as far as sales in comparison to new listings, maybe the market is kind of tightening up just ever so slightly compared to previous months and previous years during September, prices haven't done anything in terms of kind of rebounding or turning around. We've got a long way to go to get back to even this time last year. If this is a bit of a bottoming out, I expect it to be a little bit of a long kind of drawn out bottoming out and not necessarily a quick turnaround in terms of kind of zooming back up. I think it's going to take some time for prices to rebound and get back to 2024. And in general, what I would say is that prices have walked back to 2018 to 2019. So if you were a buyer and you're on the market and you can see in the history, whatever tool it is that you're using to search for properties, that a place was bought or sold in 2018, 2019 for a certain amount, unless that person has made kind of significant changes to the interior of the condo, they've undergone a renovation, something like that, it probably should go for a number similar to what they bought or sold for in 2018 or 2019. So again, a quick summary for buyers. This is one of the most buyer-friendly markets we've ever seen. Take your time, be patient, negotiate. But I will say that anecdotally, and in very kind of rare cases, the best condos can still sell quickly. So it is important to be prepared, but to be constantly looking in the market. And don't necessarily feel like you have to jump just because a perfect place comes up. It's very likely that another one under similar circumstances will come up eventually. If you're a seller, you have to have the place looking its best, priced well, and you also have to be patient. Are condos selling? Yes, but only the right ones. So if you're thinking of moving to or within Toronto, reach out. I can help identify which buildings you should focus on and which listings are good deals and in line with today's market. And if you think of selling, feel free to contact me, show you my plan for how I can help you stand out in this market among all the other listings that are out there. And if you're watching this and you found it helpful, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe for more Toronto real estate market insights. And I'd love to hear your take on what you think is happening in the market in the comments below. See you next time.